I'm calling him from now on the voice of sanity, or at least for the purposes of today's Steve Bone show. Steve, how are you? And I guess we have to start with Swansea.
Well, trying to be the voice of sanity and not the voice of senility or something, probably.
Nice one.
Yeah, Swansea was not a good night, was it? And it's, last week I think I was saying that there'd been too much doom and gloom, but given that we'd only lost 2 games in a row, now we've lost 3 in a row, it kind of feels a bit worse. I think it was the nature of it, it wasn't a very good game. I didn't watch it, I only sort of followed it and listened to it, so I can't say that I've seen it was a poor game, but I think it was a poor game. I think Pompey looked a little bit short of ideas, didn't look much of a goal threat, and then the almost inevitable goal against in the last section of the game. You go 1 down at the moment with Pompey, and you don't really feel like you're going to come back from it. So it's a bit of a rut we're in, isn't it? And he's trying different things with lineups. It was quite a bold lineup. It was the same lineup at Swansea as it was in the abandoned game at Charlton, of course, with Lang, Chaplin, Murphy, and so on, all given forward roles. No Bishop, which is something I've been calling for. I thought that Lang should be given a chance to do that. So far, it's not worked. So it's 3 games in a row that we've lost, and we haven't scored in. As I say, it's a rut, and we need to get out of it pretty quickly. We need a win from somewhere. Any old win, any old how. That is what we need. We don't care about the quality of it. We need more than one win. We need a little. In this division, if you get a couple of wins together, back-to-back wins takes you a long way, and it will take us a long way, and that's what we need to cling to the hope of. But yeah, it's people are getting a bit restless, aren't they?
Some are. We'll get to Blackburn towards the end of your piece, but for the moment I just want to get more of your thoughts on Colby Bishop. What effect do you think it might be having on him being on the bench? And also, am I right in thinking that the opposition have sort of sussed out Murphy and he's kind of getting dealt with?
Yeah, to take the Bishop question first, I don't think Colby Bishop can complain about being put on the bench because he's only scored 1 goal in 17 starts or something like that. He hasn't scored since August, so as the main striker, as the centre forward, you're always going to be judged, however well or otherwise you're playing and doing other things, you are going to be judged on how many goals you've scored. He hasn't scored enough, therefore he's on the bench. He's probably kept his starting place for longer than most strikers would. At your average club, there'd probably have been someone as a more ready-made replacement to come in for him, and he would probably have been down on the bench a month ago. So at least he's been given an extended chance to show what he can do. He has for a little while looked like he needs a rest, so I don't think it's a bad thing putting him on the bench. He won't like it because he's a striker and he wants to be playing. I'm sure he'll be on at the manager to keep starting him and keep giving him chances, but as I say, can't complain at being on the bench. He's actually a useful person to have on the bench if you need a goal in the last 20 minutes. There's the fresh legs of Bishop to bring on if you need to. Maybe we'll see that over the next few games. I just think he's looked for a few weeks as though he needs not just a rest, but maybe even a holiday. As I said before, send him and his family away in the sunshine for 2 weeks and see if he comes back refreshed and ready to fire. So I don't think he can complain about being on the bench. I think he probably will stay there for the next game or 2 at least before he comes back in, depending on how well Lang and the other forwards do. To answer your other question, Murphy, yes, certainly not so effective at the moment. Had a poor game, I think, at Swansea from what I could hear and what I've read. And I suppose, when one player has been so consistently good for a team at this level, and he's shown, what he can do down that left wing, he's shown what his MO is, how he gets the crosses in, and he has been, this season and last, he's been getting a lot of dangerous crosses in. We haven't got on the end of quite enough of them, sadly. I suppose after a while you can get found out, and you have to change your game a little bit. And maybe that's happening at the moment. He strikes me as an intelligent enough player to be able to adapt to that, and he'll change his game. We had one game, didn't we, where he was tried on the right instead of the left. That didn't work. But that might be, if he continues to be shackled completely on the left, that might be something we see again. But he's a good player. He's a good player, and like I say this about Chaplin and Swift and Lang and everybody else. They haven't become bad players overnight. They're just a bit low in confidence. They're playing in a team that's low in confidence, and that is having an effect. But Murphy will come good again, and so will the others.
Yep. Yes, I was just wondering, with the girth of your knowledge, experience, and powers of memory, can you ever remember us having a more lightweight front four than we did against Swansea?
No, it's a good question, and people pointed that out, didn't they? When that was the team selected for Charlton, I saw people say, "Well, who's going to win the headers?" Which is a fair question, although we weren't winning that many headers when we had Bishop and Kirk and people playing, or if we were winning them, they weren't coming to anything. It's quite small and quite lightweight, wasn't it? And in this league, there are divisions, there are levels of football where that could, and higher ones as well as lower ones, where that sort of model can work. But I'm not sure in the Championship it's week in, week out is gonna get you far. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I was all for Lang being tried as the main striker, and I hope he gets another. I think he might well get another chance to do that against Blackburn on Saturday. Be interesting to see what he can do, because I do think he's got goals in him, and I do think he can be a threat, and more of a threat than Bishop has been lately. But it is lightweight, yes. If you're coming up against, it depends what type of defence you're coming up against. If you're coming up against a couple of 6 foot centre halves, you don't want any ball played in the air, do you? But 6 foot centre halves can sometimes lack a bit of pace. Mm-hmm. So use, if you've got pace there with Lang, and Lang he likes his bursting runs, doesn't he? He goes some once he gets going, and so does Murphy, and so can Chaplin, and a couple of our other players, Sekicic, Yang, and so on, whoever gets selected. So you've got to adapt to the defence you're up against. But I know what you're saying. It is quite lightweight. I can't remember a front four for Pompey. No. With a sort of combined weight, if you like, of that's quite as low as this one.
Combined weight of one or two of our previous centre forwards on their own.
Absolutely, yeah. It's quite a change, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a different approach, isn't it? It's worth a try.
Let's look elsewhere on the pitch. Last season we ran out of centre halves. This season we went into the season really well stocked as far as centre backs were concerned. But I didn't expect, and I'd be really interested to get your thoughts on this. I didn't expect us to be playing in early December. 2 centre halves who are effectively, you could argue, our number 5 and number 6 choice. Boat and Matthews.
They are really, aren't they? Yeah. No disrespect to them, they're both young players. They're both good. They're good. We wouldn't have signed them if they weren't good players, but they're probably not at the moment at the level where you would want them to be your first choice 2 centre halves. We just don't have any luck in that area, do we? Started with Shaughnessy getting injured middle of September, and I do think actually since then he's probably been our biggest miss. I think in a way we've missed him more than we missed Murphy for a little while, more than we missed Lang, and more than I think we're missing Ogilvie at the moment. I keep waiting for somebody to say, Shaughnessy will be back in X date. I'm hoping that the manager will soon put a date in the diary for when we can expect to see him again, because that'll be a big boost, as it was last season when he came back. So now we've lost Paul, haven't we, to a knee injury. We don't know yet how long that's going to keep him out, but I don't think he's going to play against Blackburn, and you just fear they're still waiting for scan results you fear that could be a few weeks. Hopefully won't be any more than sort of 2 or 3 weeks. We've lost Knight as well, although I think Knight is 50-50 for Blackburn, so we might see him come back in. And that leaves you with Matthews and Boat. I think Matthews was a little bit unlucky to fall below Knight in the pecking order. He had a couple of decent appearances, I thought, but then was found out a little bit against Stoke when he had a bit of cramp, didn't he? And they scored at a point where he wasn't particularly well positioned. Lost his place after that. He's now back in. He's got another chance by default, in a way. But yeah, you get one more injury to a centre half, then you're in trouble, aren't you? Then you're looking at Marlon Pack going back there again. Which works some ways.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Who?
No, or John Messina's had him on the bench once or twice already and has gone on record this week as saying he's not making up the numbers. Ash Sizer will go on if we need him. He'll play.
Yes,
if we need him, he'll play.
That's true. Yeah, 18, I think, isn't he? And been doing very well.
17, I read.
7, yeah, you may well be right. Yeah, he's probably not that far off getting a chance, is he? And that's good. You like Pompey fans and probably fans of all clubs like to see a homegrown, home-produced youngster coming through and showing the manager he's good enough to get a chance, and then getting that chance. I'm old enough to remember back in the early 90s when Jim Smith, first day of the season, 91-92. Stunned everybody by naming a team for the opening game at Blackburn, which included Kit Simons and Andy Orford, and we thought, well, why is he putting those two rookie kids in? We're going to get hammered out of sight, and of course they did so well. They were then a rock together at the centre of defence for a couple of years for us before going on to better things. In Simon's case, so it can work. Bringing a youngster in before some might think he's ready, it does sometimes work. Messina will have watched him playing for the academy. I will have watched him in training. He'll have been training with the first team. So he's obviously seen enough there to have faith to put him on the bench. And if you're putting a player on the bench, it means you are willing at some point to put him in the team and send him out onto the pitch. So yeah, may well be an option. Don't think he would start him if he had others. If he's got two of Matthews, Boat and Knight available. Paul and Shaughnessy are still out, I think he will probably generally start with two of those three. But he's probably not too far away from having a chance, isn't he?
One can only wonder what Sam is doing with the academy, in that they have suddenly achieved an acceleration in terms of production of viable young footballers. You've got Stewart up north of the border, who's just skywriting, playing so well apparently. He is clearly a good first team goalkeeper almost already, never mind about in the making. Then you've got Singer at Moneyfields, who's scoring goals for fun. You've got Harry Clout, who's I think out as well, on loan. And you've got Sizer and presumably others coming through behind them. So one can only conjecture, because it doesn't get quite as much analysis as perhaps it should, what they've started to do right at the academy.
I mean, it could be a bit of luck, couldn't it? In terms of a particular year's intake or a couple of years' intake, just is just a sort of better quality intake, and they're now showing that. It could be a change of personnel at the academy over time. There could be coaches in place there now and support staff that are just getting the best out of players that 2 or 3 years ago that wasn't being achieved. We don't know, do we? But it's difficult to compare one year's scholars to another, really, because we don't see much of them, and you don't hear much about them, unless you only really hear about them if they score 5 goals in a youth team game, and that makes some headlines, or if they suddenly find themselves in a match day 20, as Sizer has. But it's always quite exciting, isn't it? When you see a new name there. I've seen a few, but you mentioned Singer there, the striker who's scoring for fun at Moneyfields. I've seen a few people say, well, should we be bringing him back and putting him on the bench? If if Bishop is not scoring goals at the moment, Kirk is not quite sort of coming in and filling the gap, is Singer an option? John Messino has gone on record this week as saying he doesn't think he's ready for that yet. And again, you've got to trust his judgment. This lad is only 17. You don't want to put too much on his shoulders and knock his confidence and knock his progress, do you? But there'll probably come a point where, if Pompey continue to struggle for strikers scoring goals over the rest of the season, you may well see him back on the bench at some point, I would have thought.
Certainly managing youngsters is a specialist skill in any walk of life, and in football perhaps especially. I watched a documentary a while ago about the arrival of Wayne Rooney on the scene, and somebody who knew what they were talking about said he was actually ready to play Premier League football at the age of 14, and they said 14, but what would have happened if he'd been knocked back? And they said Wayne wasn't bright enough to be knocked back by anything.
Yeah, and I suppose if you, even at that age, if you are to be that good at that age, you must have a certain level of confidence, mustn't you, in your own ability? And I suppose if you've got enough of that, then you're not going to be worried by the setbacks. You have a bad game, and you will believe that the next game will be better. If a defender rules over you for 90 minutes, you'll probably think, oh well, that was a one-off. Next week I'll be up against somebody who I'm better than, and I'll be all right. But yeah, he's an exception to the rule, isn't he? If he was ready for that level at 14, that's a freak example of it. But I'm sure there are lads around who have developed as sort of physically and as footballers enough by the time they're 16, 17 to play at this sort of level. Arsenal have used a 15-year-old, I think, this season, haven't they?
Yep.
Their first team in a game somewhere. I remember Andy Orford, second time I mentioned him this afternoon. I'm not on commission to mention him, but he played, I'm pretty sure he played an FA Cup game for Worcester when he was 15. I think might at the time have been the youngest person ever to play in the proper rounds of the FA Cup or something like that. So it happens, but you do have to be careful, and the players of that sort of age these days are more sort of protected by the rules, aren't they, than they were, in terms of sort of safeguarding and so on. Quite rightly, there are certain sort of controls in place so that they can't be misused. Or sort of led down alleys that they're not ready for, and that sort of thing. But at Pompey, we've had a few that have come through. Gary O'Neill's another one that springs to mind. He played for us. I remember him making his debut and being very good when he was 16. He made his debut in a home game against Barnsley, and that was this level. That was Championship or whatever it was called in those days. Division 1, I think it was then. It might even have been Division 2 in old money. So yeah, but fans like to see it, don't they? They like to see a bit of homegrown talent coming through. But for Pompey in recent years, they've been fairly few and far between. Yeah,
since you mentioned Andy Orford, I saw him play for Pompey in a youth match against Liverpool in the semi-final of what then was called the FA Youth Cup, I think. And I bumped into him in a corridor behind the scenes a few weeks ago, and I just reminded him of that game, and he said, he said, we had Darren Anderton playing for us, didn't we? And I said, yeah. And he said, yeah. He said, but they had Steve McManaman. And didn't he shine? And, truth is, he did. You could tell he was going to end up Liverpool and Real Madrid.
Yeah. He would only have been, 17 or 18 at that
time?
If that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
you can tell.
Yeah, Pompey had Orford, Anderton, Darryl Powell, I think, who of course went on to a very good career, played for Jamaica. I think he was in that team as well. Sometimes these players, you seem to get a sort of glut of these players who are very good, very young, all coming through at the same time. And maybe we're getting a bit of that at the moment, with Singer and Sizer and people like that. Sometimes you get a few at once, and then you'll have to wait 2 or 3 years for the next one. So maybe we're in a little golden age for that, and maybe we will reap the benefit of that in the next season or two.
Yep. Let's move sideways. I'm desperate to find out what you made of the World Cup draw. and whether you have managed to catch Jeff Stelling's now famous rant on Talk Sport about what an appalling business it was from start to finish. But what does Steve Bone say?
Has it finished yet? Have they actually finished the draw yet? I'm surprised they're not still going on with it. I mean, I didn't watch it all, but I was aware that it was going on, and I saw some people commenting about Rio Ferdinand and the whole sort of the whole event, and I thought, well, this sounds like it's worth tuning in for, so I did tune in. It was. I mean, they must have had a rehearsal, but it had the air of something that they hadn't rehearsed, didn't it? Because nobody quite knew what was happening. They didn't really explain very well as they went along what was happening in terms of different pots and teams being drawn out and who was going to go in which pot and so on and so forth. I mean, I suppose when you've got 48 teams in your final, you're asking for trouble, aren't you? It's going to be complicated. You need to keep certain teams apart, and you need to seed it, and so on and so forth. And it was much easier in the days where there was 24 teams at the World Cup final, which I thought was plenty, by the way. I was aware of Jeff Stelling commenting on social media on the night about it. I haven't seen or heard his TalkSport rant though. He's had a right go, has he? I mean, but I saw a few people say, it would have been much better if Jeff Stelling had been hosting it, which I think is probably a fair comment. No, I mean, that does make you wonder how an event that important can come across that badly, doesn't it?
No group of death.
No, there's that. Well, that's partly because there's so many teams.
Exactly.
You couldn't possibly have a team from pot 4 who are regarded as strong enough to be a real threat to Brazil or Spain or Argentina. Therefore, you can only have a sort of half a group of death. You can have I mean, England's group is actually as strong as any of them, isn't it? Croatia, Panama, and I've forgotten who else we're playing. Actually, that shows you how much I was paying attention. Ghana, that's it. Yeah, that's not straightforward, is it? I mean, England generally do quite well at the groups, and I think we'll be okay. We'll probably labour to a couple of 1-0 wins in there and get through, and then improve as we go.
Group, shall we start calling it the group of mild flu?
Yeah. Next one down from death. Yeah. I mean, it's all a bit of a charade, isn't it? And there was the business of Trump getting his award from FIFA, the FIFA Peace Prize. I saw somebody say, "Well, who's going to win the FIFA Prize for Literature?" and everything else. Don't think they've thought of that one yet. And now we've got the fun and games with Egypt and Iran being told they're going to play in the LGBT pride match, and they don't want to, or Egypt don't want to. So I think there'll be a lot of side shows and side stories to come between now and next summer. But when it comes to it, it's a World Cup, isn't it? And we'll all enjoy it, and we'll stay up until midnight to watch Japan against Honduras or whatever we're going to be served up with, because the World Cup is different level when it actually comes around to it. When it starts, we'll enjoy it.
And we're getting a cheater's card into the time slots that suit the British audience.
Yes, that's true. Yes, we are, aren't we? England's games are sort of 9 and 10 p.m. I think, aren't they, generally? Whereas some of the other games are well into the early hours, aren't they? So that might be one element of it that they have thought out quite well.
Well, Jeff Stelling's rant was in the company of Ali McCoist, I believe. He wasn't named, but it sounded like him. And one of Jeff Stelling's rants was this. He's seen an awful lot of England fans saying, "Oh, the way the draw has worked out, we'll face Brazil in the quarterfinals." Where do they get that arrogance from?
Yeah, it's quite an assumption, isn't it? When you're starting with 48 teams, you can't assume you're going to get to the quarterfinals. England usually get to the quarterfinals or the semis and then get knocked out by somebody good, but you can't assume it. Especially we're going to be playing a long way from home in what could be quite hot and humid conditions some of the time. That sort of thing doesn't always suit England very well, does it? We've seen our national team flop before in those sort of places. Of course, 1994 when it was in the States, we didn't even get there, did we? So at least we've got there this time. But yes, so I mean, if we get to the quarterfinals and play Brazil, we'll have done okay. But I think we probably all know what will happen in that one.
Way back, Arsene Wenger, amongst the various improvements that he suggested to the way the game was ruled and governed, he said that there ought to be a 3-minute tactical break, 22 minutes into the first half and 22 minutes into the second half, so that the coaches could reorganise the side according to what they've just seen. Well, they've got that in the World Cup, haven't they? Except they're calling it a 3-minute water break.
Well, I didn't know that. Right, I thought you were going to say they've got that now because the goalkeeper would just go down and pretend to be injured after 22 minutes in each game, which is just as likely to happen. Yeah, I mean, should 45-minute halves of football need to be stopped halfway through? They never used to be, did they? Wherever the game was played, seems to be a common thing now, doesn't it? That teams like a little break in that 45 minutes. Just breaks it up, doesn't it? If one team has got on top, I'm pretty sure they don't want a break like that in the middle of a half. They want to carry on playing and imposing their authority on the game. They're not going to be able to do that if they keep having to stop and troop over to the side for a drink of water.
Yes, because footballers don't get toilet breaks, do they? Like they do in tennis. But for some reason, what's popped into my mind is that World Cup, I think it was a semi, in which Gascoigne got himself banned from the next game, and so he cried. And Gary Lineker he is open about the fact that he got diarrhoea, and unfortunately he soiled himself on the pitch and had to go down injured and walk along on his backside to try to try and deal with the issue. And I just find it so human.
The most embarrassing thing you could, you don't want to be caught short in public anywhere, do you? But you don't want to be caught short like that in a big World Cup game. I don't think it was in the semi-final, was it? But it was certainly at that. Yeah, it was in one. It was at that tournament, definitely, the Italian 90, wasn't it? And it's I mean, I'm sure he's delighted that he still gets brought up and shown occasionally on the telly now, all these years later. I'm sure he's been trying to live it down ever since.
Well, one of the many nice things about Gary Lineker is he's quite self-effacing, isn't he? And he's quite happy to take the mickey out of himself. Let's go to Blackburn, though. We've run out of time, but we don't care because it's Steve Bone. Blackburn, what do you know about them? And have you come across this story that their manager is saying that he's quite happy to give up his transfer budget in order to fix the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen that particular story, but that is a problem at the moment for them, isn't it? They've had two home games where they are always the way, isn't it? They've been winning 1-0, and they've ended up having to go off for it's been abandoned for a waterlogged pitch. I think there's something to do with they're very near the river, aren't they? Is it the River Darwen? The drainage around the area is thought to have got worse in the last few years. Sorry, the dogs are very lively today. I think they're wanting to get a word in on that.
That's great. I love it. Bit of colour.
It's because we're talking about Rovers. You see, that's what it is.
Clever.
Yeah, that is a frustration for Blackburn, isn't it? If especially this season, even at Pompey, we seem to have had more rainy games than we have in a long time. I think we've had about 4 home games where I've come home quite drenched. So if the weather's like that down here, you can imagine what it's like in Lancashire. Going to be considerably worse, and that's that's potentially 6 points that they will have lost because the pitch isn't very good. That could cost them dear at the end of the season, couldn't it? Whether fans will think that money spent on the pitch should be money taken away from the transfer budget, I'm not so sure. In the position they're in, they're not too much better off than us near the bottom of the table. I think their fans will want some money spent on players as well as on the pitch in January. But it's a must-win, isn't it? I don't like to talk about must-win games in first half of the season, but it feels like it is, doesn't it? After the little run we've had, 3 defeats, no goals since Millwall, this does feel like one where we've got to be absolutely on the front foot from the start. win every ball, win every tackle, fly into everything. Try to get through. Play as though you go out there and play as though you've got to be 3-0 up by half an hour gone, and see if you are. That would be my instructions to the players. It feels like a high pressure game.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to finish by asking you if you would be prepared, and I know you always are, to stick your neck out and tell us not so much what you hope the score is, but what you think the score might be.
I think it might be a 2-0 win to Pompey.
Steve, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Voice of reason.
I look forward to the next one.